wave of games is upon us.
So hold on to your Joy-Cons.
We're back with news, opinions, and a visit from Tribute Games.
Don't forget about the cardboard.
All that and more on this month's episode of On the Shelf.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name's Cyrix.
And I'm Sol. We're extremely excited to be back with you.
April and May have been jam-packed with announcements and news.
So let's not waste any time and let's get right into the good stuff.
Speaking of good stuff, we have no corrections for this episode, which means one of two things. We either were on point, or Phineas Fool fell asleep while listening to the last episode.
We have recently published our new website. If you want to see what the latest is from us, or if you need a link to one of the many ways to listen, head over to ontheshelf.media for all of that information.
Not only will you find these things, but you can watch the YouTube feed right there. We've added some bonus content we're calling one-shots that are exclusive to our YouTube channel. These will typically be shorter videos to help satiate you between podcasts.
On to one of my favorite topics, Labo. So far, the numbers in the US have yet to be revealed, but I can tell you that I saw a whole lot of them behind the shelf waiting for pickup on release day. At the very least, we know that they've sold pretty well in Japan. Sales from Media Create show that the Variety Kit was at number 1 with over 90,000 units sold, and the Robot Kit at number 3 with over 28,000 units sold. This result should be of no surprise, as the style of what I'll call a game seems like it would definitely be popular there. GameSpot also reported that the Variety Kit was the third best-selling game in its opening weekend behind God of War and Far Cry in the UK. I took the time to open up the Variety Kit, and I put together the piano. I really enjoyed it. Putting together the piano itself took a good couple of hours, and I was really careful and meticulous not to fold incorrectly or damage the cardboard. I wouldn't necessarily say that the cardboard itself is weak, aside from it simply being cardboard, but I didn't really set any unrealistic expectations that it would hold up terribly well if I was really rough with it. The instruction flow on the Switch was really pleasing, and it was rather simple. I'd say it'd be rather simple for almost anyone at the recommended age or older to put Labo together, but if you have young kids, an adult would definitely be useful to help make sure there's no missteps, specifically on some of the more complex pieces such as the piano. The other thing that impressed me, the ingenuity required to design such a complex piece as the piano is simply astounding. Every single key, and I tested this more than once, every single key, it registers on its own. You can literally press all of them along with the little side lever and other buttons at the same time, and it will recognize every single press. You can do this complex movement with all the keys. You can press 8 of them at once, or 1 of them or 2. It doesn't really matter. It registers all of them with the little reflective tape using the IR camera on the Joy-Con. On the right Joy-Con, which was just an ingenious use of that. So the whole design of the piano, creating a black box essentially with just a little bit of light that peeks through and reflects off of that tape, makes it just perfect for that camera to read very accurately each of the little pieces. And, to be honest, it's not just about the cardboard and putting that part together. There's software, right? They bundle all this software on the system or on the cartridge to allow you to play different styles of keyboard. There's also this really advanced mode of the piano, which kind of kicks the whole thing into high gear. And there's just a ton of cool videos on YouTube that can show off what it can do.
Yeah, I caught a look at the video from Genoway, where he doesn't talk. He plays Calamari Incantation from Splatoon using the piano and also using a couple things, I think probably from the Toy-Con Garage, or the Labo Garage. So it was really interesting to see some of these things that people were doing. I didn't open mine other than to take out the actual game cart. Yet I do plan on putting the stuff together, but I'm wanting to do it with my son, and currently he's a little bit too young to enjoy it. So I have them set aside for when that happens. I may order a couple of replacement pieces instead of using what came with it, because there's some things that I'm just might not put together. Preliminary figures are suggesting that if you try to buy all of the kit as replacement pieces, it's actually more expensive than just buying the entire kit again. So I'm probably going to avoid doing that and just pick and choose the pieces that I want to order to build, but I haven't fully decided. But one thing that I do like that seems to be coming up on the horizon is I'm seeing a lot of third-party people trying to come out with their own things. Being able to use the Labo Garage to do your own sort of pseudo-programming with it has brought a lot of people to the forefront with making new peripherals for it. There's even like a guitar that is being made by a third party that uses cardboard and the Labo. So obviously they can't produce their own software for it at this point, but they're using the software that's already packaged with the current Labo to let them build these little offshoots. And that's kind of interesting to see. I'd like to really see where that's going to go. I'm also interested to see with the way the sales went in Japan. I'm really trying to waiting to see what, how Nintendo is going to support this further. Like what kind of kits. Obviously, they set themselves up to do additional kits, and I feel like they probably are going to do some. I feel like the sales numbers. I didn't see a whole lot of, I didn't hear a whole lot of sales stuff from my local stores. I know that my local GameStop got in 4 Labo kits, and they were still sitting there. They said they didn't sell any. But I also live in kind of a podunk area in Kentucky, so there's probably not a lot of demand for it. I imagine the larger cities like Lexington and Louisville probably show some better sales figures. Of course, it's sold well in Japan. So I'm really waiting to see where Nintendo takes this from here because I want to support it. I feel like it's a good thing. I'm looking forward to putting it together with my son. He's getting really big into putting stuff together and building things and deconstructing his toys and putting them back together. I feel like this is a less foot pain inducing form of Lego at this point with him. So
I would imagine that with the numeric system that they've attached to the boxes being 01 for the variety kit, 02 for the robot kit, we are definitely destined to see more of these. Japan got these really cool packages of tape that are unique. They have like camouflage and some other cool designs on them that we did not get in the States.
Yeah, those different design kits are super expensive to import too.
And I could only imagine that they're going to get even more considering how popular this was there versus what is likely the popularity level in the States. Not that it won't sell well here. It probably has. It probably did sell quite well. It just won't have this, let's say, the same appeal as God of War or Mario or some of these other things that it's competing against.
It probably won't have a lot of the same staying power either. I think a lot of people probably bought it initially for the like the gimmick of it.
Yeah, the novelty.
The novelty of having Labo. I know several reviewers that are like, I like the idea of the product and I own the product, but I'm never going to put it together. I'm just going to watch other videos, but I wanted to support it because I like the idea of it. And that's nice, but you're not really enjoying your investment at that point, aside from being able to look at it, which is fine for a lot of people. And I'm not going to judge that because, I mean, look at our collecting ideals. So, I get behind that. I'm concerned it won't have the staying power in the States. I don't know if that's going to, in the long run, make some more Japanese exclusivity be a problem, because they did get a whole bunch of those design kits and we only got the one. And, there's some people who really wanted more design kits that didn't get them. And
well, I can tell you that my thinking right out of the get-go for this is that Nintendo made a fairly large mistake in not having some of the pieces readily available at retail for rebuy. Why not have a smaller package for, say, $15 where you can just buy the parts to replace your piano so that you could build a second piano, or even some of the other pieces that are in there? I can understand with the robot kit. The robot kit is large. It's massive. It's all one major thing, but the variety kit has, 6 different things going on. And really, I don't want to have to rebuy the whole thing, but I also don't want to have to go specifically to Nintendo's website just to buy it. Although I'm going to have to rebuy for the piano because I want some undisturbed sheets to be able to put back in my variety kit for the pieces that I put together. And I'm happy to do that. But it would just be nice if they would be a little bit more consumer friendly with that type of thing. Nintendo does at times make missteps like this.
I don't know that it might not necessarily be a misstep. This may be a way of them communicating that, we feel like this product is good. It's good enough that you're not going to damage or break replacements. They're probably not taking the consideration of people who want to have undisturbed sheets, which, you know, down the road when those come in and they say on their replacement part and and that goes into your original kit. I don't know, you know, if that's going to hurt your heart a little bit, but
I don't know if it's actually going to say replacement part.
It might not. That was just me giving you a little poke, but
I know. Poke me all you want.
Careful now. This is a kid friendly show. So, but,
that's what you said.
But, it may have just been a statement. It may have been, you know, we stand by our product. We don't think you're going to need additional pieces. If you want them, we're going to provide them at a later date or, you know, on the website. But it's them saying we stand by our product. You don't necessarily need replacement pieces unless you just really want to rebuild stuff. And they may bring them to retail later. They may not. And I can understand if they don't, because a lot of retailers, the draw for Labo is going to be the software that's in there, especially if you don't really care about putting the kits together, just playing around with the garage in there. So the draw is going to be the software. So having replacement parts, you're not going to have a lot of retailers, you know, falling all over themselves to order mass quantities of replacement parts. You may get one or two people coming in asking them, can you order this for me? Can you order that for me? And that would be probably an okay scenario. But if Nintendo is like, you're either going to order a case of these or you're not getting any of them, they're probably not going to get any of them. Like, they're not going to show up in stores as replacement kits if they do it that way. So this may have been something else there where they're like, it's only feasible for us to do it online because then we can ship them out to order rather than sending, you know, a gross of them to Best Buy and then Best Buy 4 years from now sending 3/4 of a gross back.
I can understand that. I think that the one thing out of that I am thankful for is that they at least did have the foresight to make replacement kits available. That part is great. The other piece of this that I really wanted to talk about has to do with the value. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion about it's cardboard. It's cardboard. Why am I paying so much?
That's the same. Yeah, that's right. The same. That this cardboard, it's kind of grating. Because there was plenty of people in the Discord that were like, it's just cardboard. It's just cardboard, and it's almost grating at this point because it's like, you know, you're going to buy it. Like,
well,
why are you complaining? It's just cardboard.
Even outside of the collecting aspect and the fact that those people are going to buy it, the time that I took to really enjoy putting the piano together, the hours that it took to do that. And I don't just mean the construction portion of putting the piano together, but the combined time of putting it all like unboxing it, putting the piano together, getting the software going with it in there and playing around with the various modes of piano, just that piece, not even the other parts with the fishing rod or the little remote control car stuff. None of that. Just the parts that I messed with was enough enjoyment for me to consider this a win. The amount of time that I spent on there and the enjoyment factor that I got reminded me a lot of the enjoyment that I get out of Lego. You know that I've collected some really massive Lego sets, and the biggest enjoyment piece is just the time that you can take to really sort all those pieces out and meticulously put all that stuff together and construct it, and then kind of check out what that finished product is and really get a feeling of both accomplishment and just satisfaction, because it's calming. I really enjoy that calming aspect. So to me, the purchase was quite worth it. I could imagine at some point I might put together the robot kit. I'm a little on the fence because I really do like the idea of having a full set of that in there. And if I bust that one out, I'm pretty much committing to the whole set, but I really enjoyed it. So I might do that.
I feel like the robot kit would be more beneficial in a 2-switch household where you have 2 of the kits and you can play multiplayer. I don't know how enjoyable playing single player robot is it's going to be neat at first to see the ingenuity behind, all the motion and stuff. But I feel like its biggest compliment is the fact that it's multiplayer. So if I have a local friend who has, a Switch and has the game, step one would obviously be for me to go out and make friends. But the being able to play multiplayer on that would be the main draw to building the robot outside of building it with my son, to let him play with it. So there's no real draw to the building the robot for me outside of that. I mean, you go back to, what it was like as a kid, and it's like, this is just cardboard. It's like, yeah, well, when your parents bought something that was shipped to them and they took out what they ordered, what did you do with the box? I mean, you played with it. You made forts out of it. You made weapons out of it. You pretended. Like, that's what this is. This is bringing your imagination to life. You can build these things with cardboard and then actually see them getting used. Like, that's what this is. It's just an extension of what we used to do as kids. It's
but you're lucky if you had cardboard. We didn't. I had to use my imagination.
You had to go outside and break switches off and play swords and make your own lightsaber sounds. I get it.
Uphill in the snow.
Uphill, both ways. While being chased by velociraptors. I know.
That's right.
That's the thing.
You know what I had for toys? I had a rock. I had a rock, and I had to pretend that the rock was even round. It was jagged, and it hurt.
You had a hoop that you pushed around with a stick.
A square hoop, which made it even more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's all this is. Like, you can say it's cardboard all you want, but it's, at the end of the day, kids are going to play with it. Like, kids are going to play with anything that you set in front of them they can put their mind to. My son loves playing with boxes we get from Amazon. So imagine what it's going to be like when he...
highfalutin ordering from Amazon.
No, I'm sorry that I don't, I don't even know where to go with that. Like you don't order from Amazon. So,
yeah, okay.
So, he likes to do that stuff. So
I hand weave all of my clothes. I don't buy anything.
Imagine his face when he gets to see a piece of cardboard get turned into a piano that then makes noise. When he sees something being folded out of nothing and then responding to key presses, it's going to be, for his mind, it's going to be explosive. It's not going to be something that he expects. Like, we're kind of used to this kind of thing. That's the joy for me. That's the joy I'm going to have, is putting this together with him and then seeing his face light up when he sees what it does. Like, that's going to be amazing.
So it's not just cardboard. It's not just a brick. It's a game.
It's memories.
That's right.
It's memories, and a game, and teary eyes, and stop growing up so damn fast. And
so I'm going to use that to segue. Speaking of bricks, since our last episode, news has come out that a fix for at least some of the brick switches has been found. Did you like that segue?
Yeah, that was good. That was speaking. You could have segued after you said Lego.
I could
really want to go with bricks.
I'm not gonna.
Well, it's too late now.
I know. So if you recall, those that have been using unlicensed docks or other items similar to that would potentially have bricked their system after the 5.0 update. Well, between the last time we got together to record and this time, a fix, although quite difficult, has been identified by Reddit user, and I'm going to butcher this, Gian Wahanjal. I'm definitely butchering that. It's GYENWAHANGEL, for those of you keeping score. On one of those boards of the switch, there's an IC, also known as an integrated circuit, identified as M as in Mary 92 T as in Tom 36. That's M92T36. That chip is responsible for routing power throughout the system. Unfortunately for most people, a repair of a chip like that is going to be impossible without the correct equipment, as the chip uses surface mounting, where the solder pads are located underneath the IC rather than extending from it, not to mention the chip's rather small. This type of solder connection has become rather common in modern electronics because they're designed to maximize space efficiency on the boards so that they can use as little actual space as possible. The downside here is that the layperson isn't going to be able to complete a replacement of a chip like that. There are some repair shops that will be able to replace SMCs such as the M92T36, but keep in mind that you may want to simply bite the bullet and contact Nintendo for a repair or a replacement while the unit is under warranty. Unfortunately, and this is changing, and we'll get into this, since cloud saves are not yet a reality, that does mean that if you were to send it in right now, you could lose your saves if they swap out your unit.
So this is definitely one of those don't try this at home kind of scenarios. I mean, if you're technically inclined, you've got the right gear, and more power to you. But if you want it fixed, and you want it fixed properly, and you don't want to void your warranty, then the safest thing is to send it in. But as you said, you are going to lose whatever is currently on your system as of right now. So it's happened for the easiest of fixes. I mean, we know somebody who had a volume button issue. They sent it in, got their switch back, and all the save files were gone. So she had some volume issues and sent in the switch. And it was really a simple fix. They didn't even have to replace the unit. They just had to open it up and make some adjustments to the toggle button. And they still cleared out all the save files. And I mean, you're talking hundreds of hours in Zelda and Xenoblade. So it was a big deal. Like, there for a while, we were kind of concerned that she was just going to drop off and not play Switch anymore. So thankfully that didn't happen, but it's a traumatic thing for people. So honestly, there's not really much way around it. It's if you use a third party peripheral and it bricked your system, you can take it to a repair shop or try to do it yourself. But if you want it done correctly and without causing more additional damage or potentially breaking something else, you're going to have to send it to Nintendo, and until they establish the cloud saves, this is the risk you're going to take.
I wonder if it's even going to be possible to employ the cloud saves anyways at a certain point, because if the system is bricked and you can't get in and do a system update, etc., I'm going to guess that cloud saves are going to require that when they start to employ that. And we're not talking until like September.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not going to be able to rely on cloud saves currently. So if your system bricks after cloud saves get established, then you don't have to worry. So, but right now, it's not going to be an option. You're going to lose everything unless you take it to a third party or you do it yourself, which there's risks involved. This is just the risk you take or the price you pay, one or the other.
But how weird is it that we're actually able to even talk about cloud saves yet? I know it's a topic we have to get to a little bit later on the podcast. I'm giving away a big look under the covers here at one of our other stories, but the idea that we're even discussing that now, which at the time of our recording this is rather new news. I mean, literally just broke within less than 24 hours ago. So, to say, I literally had to rewrite this part of our podcast just to even discuss this because of the introduction of that. So we're burying the lead a little bit by having this discussion before that one. But it kind of goes to show how big a deal both that is and how big a misstep it was not to have that stuff in place when we consider what has happened with these brick systems.
Yeah, the cloud saving is something that probably should have been looked at from the beginning. And that's an argument that everybody makes, is that it should have been something to look at from the beginning because they were the only system that didn't really institute any kind of cloud saving or outside saving. So this is the price that we pay because they chose to go this route, and dealing with angry customers is the price they're paying, which they probably don't really care. I mean, they care, obviously they care, but they're not going to hear every voice. So.
No, I don't think so. I will say that there is somebody that does seem to hear every voice. George, welcome back to the show.
I didn't get enough last time. I wanted to come back and just say hi again.
We didn't scare you away?
You didn't. You managed to keep me on the Discord for quite a while now, so you're doing pretty well.
I'm kind of surprised because Cyrix has a tendency to chase people off.
I do have that kind of personality.
There's been times where Cyrix has scared me, but it's all good. And that picture, a Polaroid picture of me, so it's all.
We all need a little fear in our lives.
Oh, that's fair.
So you guys are getting hot here. You got Flamin' the Flood out, and that's sitting on my shelf already.
That is. That's good.
Beautiful.
Mine came in with no problems this time.
I'm glad it didn't get stocked in customs for however long or whatever.
Almost 2 months now.
I told you. I think Cyrix is on a list.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're coming up on another release pretty soon here.
Yeah, so I'm hoping. I think when this goes out, I think the day after or 2 days after, a few days after this goes out, we'll be announcing our third title. It's been delayed a little bit, mainly just because of some unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, we've got kind of our next kind of 5 or 6 titles now locked in. So we're hoping now to have kind of consistent announcements and not have to tease you guys for months on end.
Okay. So speaking of teasing, though, you guys did kind of a Twitter storm. You had 5 or so clues out on Twitter, and people were trying to get this thing retweeted over and over and over, hyping it up. What was your plan? What were you going for? Just trying to build that hype?
And it was kind of, I think we weren't ready to announce yet, so it was kind of keeping people, entertained, and keeping people, guessing about what it could be. And I think having that sort of teasing. I know I'm a teasy guy, as you guys might know. So yeah, I like doing that. And I think as well, it's kind of, for me, it was interesting to see what sort of hype there was. And I was really kind of surprised by how many people were hyped about kind of, the third release, which is, for me, very surreal and was a really amazing experience to see. So yeah, it was cool. It was good to see kind of, people guessing, kind of thinking what they, is. And, yeah, definitely quite a lot of hype, which is, I'm very chuffed about.
So you don't have to tell us who it was or what they said, but has anybody actually guessed the game? Yes or no?
The game has been guessed. Yes.
Okay.
Whether that's on Twitter, on Discord, the game has been guessed. I think I thought they might get it, but the name has been. I've seen the name being written. So that's one thing I can say.
That's exciting.
It is exciting. I think with this, there are a lot of detectives out there, which is cool to see. And it was amazing just to see how many people kind of, were, what about this game? It's like, oh no, but it doesn't fit clue number 3. And that whole community response was incredible. But I think it's a wonderful, wonderful game. And I think definitely what we've done with it in terms of artwork and what we've done with it in terms of, I think the way we're going to present the product to the fans is really going to be something quite special. Personally, I'm very, very excited about it. And I know the developer as well is literally so eager to announce it. And yeah, it's a very special experience that this game is, and I think it's something that I think will appeal to so many people. And I think there'll be some people that don't know this game that when they pick it up and when they see the box art, I think they'll be like, "Oh my god, wow, that's amazing!" How much love and care has gone into the game itself in terms of from the developer point of view. I think people, will really be drawn to this title. So I'm really excited to bring this game to people that might not have heard of the game before. But at the same time, this game's got a massive community around it already. It's an exciting title because I think we're going to be rewarding the fans of the game, but then also rewarding people that maybe haven't heard of it or haven't played it before.
I think out of all the different Twitter clues that you put out there, I think my favorite was clue number 6, although I do want to revisit clue number 5 for just a second. What happened with clue number 5? I'm
a tease. So I kind of wanted to make people feel like they've missed clue number 5.
I thought I did. I had to reach out. I was like, where's clue number 5? What's going on?
Well,
I thought I missed it.
I want people to think, has it been taken down? Was it too much, too obvious by that clue? So I really wanted to get people guessing, get people thinking a little bit. So I'm glad I made you think.
It definitely worked.
It was written on the back of the Polaroid. That's why I got stuck in customs. It's written on the back of the Polaroid.
So number 6, though, it said, "This is a game which will put delight on every gamer that plays it, and at the same time, it might break your heart. This is a heartfelt journey, and it should be played with headphones on." So that tells me, there's some really great music and sound, most likely, for this game. And a heartfelt journey, I mean, that's nothing obvious, but it really appeals. It really kind of sucks me in and makes me want to know what it is. What's the story? Why is this so why is it going to break my heart?
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's very much a roller coaster playing this game. It's a game where you get so attached to the characters involved in the game that bad or when something goes well, you're really going to feel that. And I think the whole experience for me personally, when I first played this game, I was staying on my bed, had headphones in, was playing it, up until the late hours of the night, and that whole experience for me was such a surreal experience, such a experience. I think I want people to have that same experience, kind of on the train to work and stuff, and you're sitting there with your headphones in, you get so immersed in this experience, and I think it's really going to appeal to people, that same opportunity of putting the headphones in, really getting immersed in the game. So I'm really excited to see people kind of respond to that.
Well, I would imagine that you're going to have a lot of excitement come around the time of the release. And I could also imagine that once we find out what the actual game is and people start looking back at all of the clues that were given, it'll be one of those head smacking moments where we're all like, oh, that totally makes sense. So
yeah, I think definitely kind of looking back at this stuff, I think yeah, there'll be a few moments where I hope people are like, oh my god, that made sense now, or that there was actually a clue within the clue, and I think there's layers to this. Even in like small interviews, I always will give little little hints usually. And it all kind of play in together, and it all kind of will hopefully the announcement will be like a cherry on the top of this kind of whole months of teasing.
And then we're going to go back and look through tweets and Discord history and try to find who was the person that first guessed it.
It's I know the person's Twitter handle / or maybe it was on Discord, who got guessed it first. I want to make sure they get a free copy of the game. So
that's awesome. That's a great way to do it.
I think we're definitely a company that's built on the community, and we're a company that want to be an extension of the community rather than being this kind of external body. So we always want to hear people's suggestions and people's feedback. So it was really cool to see people guessing and rewarding them for spending time thinking about what we're going to release. I think definitely going back to the soundtrack and the whole musical experience of the game. It's a game with so much sound that fit on one vinyl. So I hope we're going to have effectively a double vinyl disc for this, and even a double vinyl disc didn't fit all the sound as well. So this is a game with a lot of amazing soundtrack.
We saw your tweet on your birthday. Happy belated birthday! I wished it on the day as well. I think so. It sounds like something I would do. And I noticed that you had Conker's Bad Fur Day inbox. It's a great pickup, but also that you were wearing a super rare hoodie. And I told you if you do them in black and you make it a zip up, that I would be completely on board. So where are we with that?
With that, I mean, in terms of I guess like a more generic kind of super rare merchandise side of things, we're hoping to have that kind of out soon. So there'll definitely be kind of t-shirts, jumpers, trading card binders. There's quite a lot of trading card people that there'll be a trading card binder. And then also there's a bit of a surprise as well, kind of super rare merchandise wise. Something that I think people probably haven't thought about in terms of kind of merchandise associated with our company, but we've got some really kind of cool stuff.
Super rare, the toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly. Now you can wipe your bum and think about your favorite limited distributor company.
All at the same time.
I don't need toilet paper to do that, because I do that constantly. So
exactly. I'm sure your toilet thoughts are usually super related.
Well, see, I keep all of my Switch games in the bathroom so that I can swap out as I need to, as I beat them. And so I look over and I see them there, and I'm like, hey, it's a good time to be thinking about super rare games.
Taking the whole man cave thing to an extra level.
Yep, my man room is all it is. It's the man room.
I'm really hoping that if you are going to consider carrying some clothing, that you do it in freedom sizes, because we're a large country.
I mean, yeah, you're pretty tall, so aren't you? You're saying, so I'll make sure.
I think he's already wrote me in. I'm on board. I really like what you guys are doing over there. I can't get enough. I'm waiting for the next release. So you've got me on edge.
My wallet will enjoy it a whole lot more when you get that U.S. distribution thing going.
Exactly. That should definitely help people out, I think.
Do you have an estimate about what release number around that may come into play, or is that still being hashed out?
It's still a bit difficult due to with the fact that distributing a game with a PEGI rating in the US is a bit complicated. So it's still not confirmed yet. So I'm hoping soon, but regardless of, then there'll definitely be cheaper and quicker for other releases going forward, regardless of the distribution stuff. So
yeah, I think that'll help a lot of people out. What about, you had mentioned the last time we spoke about Super Rare Club, and I know you've been working hard on that. Where do you think that's at this point?
This is something that I'm very excited about. So again, the detail, I think as a company, obviously starting out, we're kind of obviously trying to get the core business really set up and really, efficient in terms of obviously getting the pipeline of product streams and also getting the pipeline of consumer buys it, consumer receives it. We really want to reduce that time. And obviously we're a small outfit, so we're really trying to perfect, I guess, the art of publishing and distribution in this kind of, this nature. Our club is something which is, something that we always talk about, and we're we're always trying to, we're still trying to finalize all the details, but hopefully very soon we'll kind of announce it. But the idea is this is a very exclusive club with a very limited amount of places on it, that people can effectively sign up for content and get it early. When I say early, I mean effectively a few days early than the rest of the people. They'll be on kind of a exclusive mailing list. So they'll get information that people, the rest consumers might get a bit later. They will get kind of exclusive merchandise. It's a really exclusive club of people that are really passionate about our product. And the idea is we'll kind of tailor fit this number of the amount of people on this list to kind of, fit, I guess, the demand for our products really. So the idea is, we won't become a company that's like a subscription model. It won't be a case of, that everyone is just effectively on this list and just waiting for the games to arrive. This is the idea: is the Super Rare Club is, the passionate fans that really love what we're doing and kind of want access to, maybe, hints early, exclusive trading card stuff. And the idea is it'll be kind of like, limited amount of places. And if someone drops out, then a place comes available and it's kind of a very exclusive club that will kind of, so I think that's kind of the plan going forward. The finer details of it in terms of price, in terms of the way, the finer tuned details, we haven't kind of decided yet. Because as I said, we're kind of, obviously focusing on the core business and kind of, making sure that we're the best company we can be before we kind of, introduce something like that. But this, hopefully in the next kind of month or two, we'll kind of have more details on that that we can share with people and really get people kind of, hyped up about this Super Rare Club. And there's already kind of, we've got some, logo designs for kind of the Super Rare Club, and, you might get a special T-shirt with, saying you're part of the club, and, it's really part of this exclusive part of the business. But again, it's not a cult, because the more I talk about it, it sounds like a cult, but it's not.
I'm already drinking the Kool-Aid though.
Yeah, we're already pretty much a cult at this point.
Well, George, I want to thank you for the quick drop by. Ended up not being so quick, but I do thank you for coming by. You've been a fantastic guest of our Discord, hanging out, answering questions for people and talking to everybody and giving everybody a chance to kind of hear right from the source what you guys are going to be doing, where things are headed. And I think everybody's very appreciative of that.
I'm glad. I mean, I guess, you say I'm a guest, but I'd say, I'm part of the community. I wouldn't, even say I'm a guest at this point. I think I definitely just love collecting with people and seeing what people are saying. And I think the Discord and, the community that we've kind of, we're part of is definitely something that's much greater than just collecting Switch games. This is a community of people that love video games and, are just nice people. So it's, again, I'm very privileged to be a guest, but I'm also privileged to be part of a great community.
Well, we appreciate that, and we definitely enjoy having you as a part of that community for sure.
Amazing. I'm very privileged.
Before we let you go, any other hints for SRG3 coming out real soon?
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that I've mentioned before. This is kind of like a Switch exclusive. It's seen variations kind of on other platforms, and it's been incredibly well received on those platforms. And this is the first time it appearing on a Nintendo console, and the first time this game's ever featured as a physical release. So yeah, I think it makes it even more special when this is the only physical release of the game.
Tokitori.
Yeah, you got it. Funny you say that, because it's a game which until quite recently, and I thought it was like a meme as well. I thought it was like a room in the night sky sort of thing. I started watching trailers and started it. It's actually a really awesome game.
Well, I guess we'll find out real soon, won't we?
Find out how awesome the game is.
Well, thanks again for dropping by. We hope to have you again soon.
Sure, you'll have me again soon if you want me.
So, speaking of limited type releases, let's talk a bit about limited run.
Look at you trying to segue in every man.
That was my goal for the day. I woke up this morning and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? Segue. I'm going to segue a bunch.
Yeah, this is almost segue in everything I do.
That's right. So, speaking of segueing.
Let's
do that. So I want to talk a little bit about Limited Run because there's been a bunch of stuff going on. They've been really busy over there. Well, we knew that Saturday Morning RPG was coming. That was announced a while back. No shocker there. There should be a real nice steelbook available for that one, as Josh and Doug shared the art for that via Twitter weeks ago. But be sure to check out our one-shot review of Saturday Morning RPG for an in-depth look at the game. Also, in case you missed it, we spoke with Josh and Doug during episode 3. Give that a listen if you haven't yet. Aside from Saturday Morning RPG, there was a little bit of an interesting development for about a week here. Originally, it looked like we were going to get a surprise game on Friday the 11th, Josh had given some heavy hints in the Discord, and Doug was in Japan working on some deals. Then an image was posted for Pixel Junk Monsters 2 from Spike Chunsoft, but it was quickly taken down. Shortly thereafter, another tweet hit about a delay in the date for that, for the surprise. Well, they finally got things ironed out, and yes, it was Pixel Junk Monsters 2, which made its way to their order page on the 18th by the time this airs. In fact, if you're catching this podcast early enough, orders should still be open for the standard edition. On this one, the collector's edition for this game is only a mere 2,500 copies, so they're probably going to sell out rather quickly.
And it appears that they're doing steelbooks for just about all of their special editions, maybe even all of their special editions. Because I noticed that this one in the announcement had a steelbook, I believe. I am correct in saying this, yes?
Yeah, and Saturday Morning RPG had a really nice one.
Yeah, they had Commander Hood on one side and Marty, the main protagonist, on the other side, and it looked really sharp. They're doing really good with their steelbooks. The Switch has not gotten a whole lot of steelbooks so far. You did have Bayonetta had a steelbook. Xenoblade had a steelbook,
and there was a steelbook for Mario Kart as well from Best Buy after the release.
So there was also a steelbook teased for Attack on Titan, but it turned out that one was kind of Blu-ray sized and people avoided it. But there was one released, or a sleeve of one that's going to be released for Shining Resonance Refrain Draconic Launch Edition, if you have that on pre-order.
I think that it'll be nice to see what Limited Run does with future steelbooks. We'd also like to give a quick shout out to the winner of our Twitter giveaway for 2 of the beautiful gold foil Thimbleweed Park cards. That winner was at That's a Nerdy Kid. He was one of hundreds of entrants. Congratulations again, and thank you for following us on Twitter. If you haven't followed us there, you can find us at OTS Collectors. Again, that's OTS Collectors. We're going to try to continue to give away cool stuff from our guests and some other items as well, so stay tuned and don't forget to pay attention when you see those come up. Limited Run has also sold some games, not sure if you know that. They've had 3 Switch games up for sale prior to this point, prior to our recording. Thimbleweed Park, Mercenary Kings, and Flint Hook. They've all been listed and have completed their 2-week listings. Per Josh, Thimbleweed Park sold 10,401 standard copies and the full 3,000 allotment of the collector's editions. According to the latest information from him, they ordered 14,000 copies from Nintendo in total. That should cover, the extra should cover, problems in shipping, breakage, etc. Limited Run will also be ordering 10,000 copies each of both Flint Hook and Mercenary Kings. They sold 8,913 copies of Flint Hook and 9,102 copies of Mercenary Kings. Both of those include the big box collector set that had both games in it. Lastly, another big announcement from LRG that happened on the 20th of April was that Night Trap 25th Anniversary Edition will be making its way to the Switch. Now, this is a pretty big deal considering how quickly the PS4 version sold, not to mention that game's history with ESRB. It will now receive both a rating from ESRB and will be released on a Nintendo console for the very first time, which is rather historic. Night Trap, along with Mortal Kombat, are the 2 games most responsible for the creation of ESRB in the first place.
It was actually during the trial that for the creation of the ESRB that Howard Lincoln, who was a former chairman of Nintendo of America, actually stated that Night Trap will not and will never be put on a Nintendo system. And now we're kind of getting that.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about that. So yeah, it's being put out by Streaming Villains, and then LRG is going to be making the physical copies of it, and it's going to be one of those games that I'm double dipping on because I did buy limited runs release for it on PS4.
Which cover did you end up getting? Did you get the red cover or the regular cover?
No, I have the blue cover. The blue cover is what came on mine. And then, actually it's going to be, technically it's going to be more than that for me because I actually have it on PC also from them. So
I think the only copy I ever owned was the Sega CD copy, the original Sega CD.
Yeah. So I remember seeing it back when it was new on Sega CD. I had a couple of friends live down the road. They had a Sega CD and they had that game. And I remember them having a magazine that told them what times to tune in to which cameras and stuff like that. And I thought that was kind of neat. Of course, I was younger. I didn't really see the big deal about the game back then that apparently the government decided the ESRB needed to be established. But I'll be buying the game again.
Well, you have to remember prior to that point, for the most part, video games on consoles did not contain, at least in the United States, did not really contain risque material. And then Mortal Kombat was just a poster child for a bloody video game, which in all essence has been far surpassed by many, many games. The blood and violence and gore in plenty of video games that have been released with ESRB and without ESRB ratings, ever since. That's extremely tame, as is Night Trap. Night Trap, starring Dana Plato, by the way, who went down her own dark path. It was symbolic. It was just used as a platform to say, hey, look, this exists in a video game. We need to push our agenda. This needs to be regulated because apparently, this is a problem. That's how it was presented. This is some sort of epidemic issue that if we don't get on top of this right now, will, drive our children to be, violent rapists. It really wasn't going to be that bad. It has not been that bad.
And the little funny tidbit before we move on about this is that Night Trap and Mortal Kombat obviously are what spawned the ESRB, and Limited Run were putting out games that didn't require the ESRB because they were selling directly to consumers. They weren't selling them through stores, so they were getting around the ESRB that way. And then right as they released Night Trap, the ESRB tells them that they need to start putting ESRB ratings on their games.
Except I don't think Night Trap on their PS4 version didn't have it.
No, it did not. Neither did the PC version. In fact, the last game they released without an ESRB rating was Caladrius Blaze. So they did have to start putting ESRB ratings on all games after those. And,
right, but I
think there might have been a couple.
This release for the Switch of Night Trap will be the first release of Night Trap that has an ESRB rating on it. That's where I was getting to. This will be the first time that Night Trap has an ESRB from the get-go. I don't think they reprinted additional copies on the Sega CD and stuff back in the day with ESRBs, but this is going to be the one that from the first print to the last print is going to have an ESRB. And it may be the only run that has ESRB on it at all, because like I said, I don't know how they handled the establishment after the fact back in '94 or whenever. I doubt we're going to see this come out on another platform at this point. I mean, this is a bit of a novelty as is. So
yeah, well, it came out simply because it was the 25th anniversary to begin with, and now it's coming out. If it's not coming out for the memes, I'm gonna feel bad because it's great. Like this is perfect. Like Howard Lincoln said never, and now it's like, hey,
here it is.
Check it out.
That's right.
Here it is.
Here it is. And you just have to know there's some poor schmuck sitting over at ESRB that actually has to rate this, and he's kind of chuckling to himself somewhere.
It's gonna be and it's gonna be kind of, it might be kind of soul crushing if they keep giving the same guy the responsibility to look at Night Trap.
Yeah, this is going to be a kind of an historic moment in a sense, which I think is a little bit important. I think it's important that we talk about it, which is one of the big reasons I wanted to bring that up, just because of its significance to that. Now, the ESRB rating itself is just one aspect of it. We all have our own opinions, and I'll kind of disclaim that this is just my personal opinion, but I'm fairly certain that most parents that are going with their kids to go buy a video game aren't even looking at the ESRB rating at all. And I don't personally see a reason why it has to be on the front cover of a game. I think it disturbs the artwork. I know that this is kind of a sensitive topic for people. I'm a parent. I have a child who I am concerned about what video games he plays. But at the same time, I'm an involved parent, and I kind of, watch what he's doing. And when he has something that he wants to play, I just go look at the game. I go online. I check out videos of it. I check out information I can find. If there's something he wants to play that he doesn't have, I just make sure personally that it's okay to my standards and not somebody else's. I don't blindly follow an ESRB rating. I look at the actual game.
Here you go, Johnny. Play some Galgun.
Was that wrong? Should I not have given that to him?
No, you're good.
I'm training him just
Dad.
fine, right?
Fine.
Put that Labo away, son. Let me give you a real game. Here's Galgun and Night Trap.
Yep.
After having such a great time talking to Josh and Doug from Limited Run during our last podcast, we were fortunate enough to be able to get in touch with Tribute Games. Here's our interview with JF Major from Tribute Games. So today we've got a very special guest joining us from Tribute Games. We have JF Major. JF, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We really appreciate you joining us for a little bit. We have some questions for you.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So while we were researching for the interview, I found out that Tribute Games was born out of a specific desire connected to its namesake. Can you tell us more about that?
So basically, Tribute was started as a desire to keep working on 2D titles. So most of our initial employees worked back at Ubisoft, and we did 2D titles for the Game Boy Advance platform back then. So we worked on like TMNT, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles license, or Open Season for Game Boy Advance. And we were always like huge fans of the NES era and Super Nintendo era. So it was really fitting to work on the Game Boy Advance. And eventually, as consoles got more advanced or capable, I would say, Ubisoft got to stop doing 2D titles. So we got one last chance with Scott Pilgrim, but afterwards we kind of got moved around to larger titles like Assassin's Creed or Prince of Persia, Splinter Cell, or whatever. And it just didn't fit in anymore. Like our passion was with 2D games and especially pixel art games. So we decided, let's just start our own company and keep doing what we're best at and what we actually love doing. So that's when we started Tribute. The rest is kind of history.
So what's the biggest difference between developing under the Tribute banner versus developing for Ubisoft?
Our wallet. Basically, we have to figure out how to finance everything. And one thing that we noticed really quickly is we used to make games in about like 8 months to a year. So the normal development cycle would be like we make a game in 8 months and then pass it on to some magical, department, and suddenly it's on the shelves. And when we started Tribute, like we found out that magical place, it doesn't exist at Tribute. Like we have to actually take the game and find a way to distribute it and do marketing for it and get sales and all that stuff. So that was kind of like our first moment where, I don't know, we felt like we didn't know what we were doing. And yeah, it was fun though. Like, and we've learned so much in the process of doing that. So yeah.
So prior to founding Tribute Games, you spent a year at IDOS where you worked as the senior gameplay programmer on a little game called Deus Ex Human Revolution. And can you tell us what that was like?
That was amazing because IDOS in Montreal is a fairly small studio. So it was kind of like going back to Game Boy Advance where you kind of knew everyone on the team and everyone was kind of like a small family basically. And I'm pretty proud of the project that we ended up shipping. It got critically acclaimed. I don't know, it got like a lot of praise for it. Yeah, I think when I made that move, I kind of knew that I was going to start Tribute. I just wanted to kind of see what was out there, and because I had been working at Ubisoft for about 6 years, and yeah, I just needed to make sure that I was kind of doing the right move.
Anything specific that you've taken from Ubi or Eidos that you made sure that you carried over to Tribute Games, something that worked so well that you had to make sure that it continued with your work?
I think there's more stuff that I wanted to avoid doing. Yeah, I think one thing that we wanted to kind of stay lean. So when we were on Game Boy Advance, like we were about a team of 10 to 12 people. So a really small team. Everyone had a huge impact on the game.
Since you said that there was things maybe more that you wanted to not do versus things that you just had to bring over that you wanted to do, what's some of those examples? What are the things you wanted to avoid?
One thing, well, a couple of things that we wanted to avoid was crunch time, which is normally everyone kind of expect that when you're making games, you have to work long hours and overwork yourself. But that was one thing that we set out, and we were sure that we didn't want to force anyone to do actual overtime. So I wouldn't say that like no one's never done like overtime, but we never force anyone to do it. So like in my 7 years at Tribute, I think I probably did 40 hours of overtime. Yeah, I think we're kind of able to achieve that. And also just like minor things like sick days. So at Ubisoft, you normally have 2 sick days for your whole year, which is nothing. So people would basically show up to work sick and spread their virus or whatever. So at Tribute, as long as you're not like abusing it, like you can take 20 sick days in a year easily and you won't really complain. So just like small details like that, just that makes the work environment a bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a very difficult culture while you were at Ubisoft with rules of that nature.
Yeah, but I think I understand where they're coming from. Like when you get to a certain size, it becomes so hard to manage all of that and making sure that no one's kind of like taking advantage of you and everything. So I don't know, we'll see. I really hope we can keep that up at Tribute.
So let's talk about maybe some brighter days. Let's talk a little bit about Tribute. What can you tell us about the very original release on Windows of Ninja Senki?
Not really the best person to talk about Ninja Senki, but the story behind it is Jonathan Levine, my business partner. He before we started Tribute, at some point he quit Ubisoft and he worked on that game alone, and he did everything from programming to the art of the game, and he just released it as a free game, just I don't know, for the fun of it. And at Tribute we decided for like its 5th year anniversary or around that time, we decided let's go back to that game and pip it out a bit and then release it on PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 4 and Vita. So yeah, we just spent a bit of time on it and decided to rework it a bit.
So you it's perfect because you just sort of walked into the next thing that I was going to ask about that release, about I should say the re-release. What were the areas, I guess, then that you guys felt were unfinished or that had more story to tell? Is that kind of the reason for that?
Yeah, I think Jonathan, I don't want to like speak for him, but I think he felt like some areas were like he cut corners like in some areas, and the game was pretty rough. Like it didn't really have proper save files, and he added like objectives and achievements, but also like some enemies just reused some textures or some sprites from other enemies. So he went back to it and actually kind of like finished it up, I guess, and improved it all around.
It can be a great opportunity to go back to a game like that, I think, and kind of revisit what you had done and smooth over some of the rough edges and really give it the attention that you might have thought about after the fact. So I think that's a really neat concept.
Yeah, and if I can add something on that.
Yeah.
The other thing is we were used to games where we would just ship it, and then there's no way to update it. Like you just, if someone complains about the controls or anything, like you can't act on that. Like on Game Boy Advance, you were done. Like if there's a game-breaking bug, like it's just too bad. But I think that's something that we found out later on, or actually like the video game industry kind of shifted, where now a game that ships is no longer a finished product, and it might see some improvements down the road. So I think that was kind of like a step in that direction, where Jonathan didn't have the time back then to listen to people's feedback and act on them, but we decided to kind of like take a few months to listen to what people had said back then, and then just improve it.
Tribute's first widely released game is an interesting combination of RPG and Breakout/Arkanoid. So what can you tell us about, coming up with the concept for Wizorb?
Wizorb, like the story behind it is when we started Tribute, we wanted to, this is going to sound really bad, but not aim low, but we wanted to set our goals to be achievable. For our first title, like we built our whole like engine, our tools and everything. We felt like the Arkanoid genre wasn't really used all that much in the years that we started Tribute. Like it was really a type of game that no one was really touching anymore. We're huge fans of Zelda, and so that's when we decided, like, let's try to mix both. So while you're in the Arkanoid mode, there's these enemies that walk around, see in Arkanoid games, and you have a boss fight at the end of a world. But then when you're back in the Zelda world, which is kind of like a top-down view, like the Link to the Past game, well, that allowed us to kind of tell a story, which is normally kind of hard for an Arkanoid game to do. Like normally you don't have a story with that type of game. So that allowed us to kind of set the tone and explain what was going on inside the game and explain everything. So that's kind of our reasoning behind like the mashup of both of those types of games. And like Brick Breaker is a fairly simple type of game, so it allowed us to really develop all of our things and start the company and get our name out there, I guess.
What's the biggest challenge in moving to a bigger multi-platform release?
I think we took it pretty slow. So with Wizorb, initially it was released on Xbox 360 as a Xbox Live Indie Games title. And then we eventually released on PC, and then on iOS, and eventually on PS Minis. That one was more of like, we just spread out all the releases. And then with Mercenary Kings, it was somewhat similar, where we did early access initially, and then for our final release, we released on PC and PS4 somewhat at the same time. Going forward, we're trying to like release all the platforms at once, but it's really a big challenge. I applaud everyone that achieves it. It's so stressful, and it's not always fun times.
One of the things that we noticed from all of the products is really your love for the pixel art and that 2D. It seems to be a really deeply adored aesthetic that's rooted in that early history of gaming, and you've touched on it a little bit, but what does that love for that style mean to you personally?
Our love for pixel art comes mostly from growing up with a Nintendo and Super Nintendo. And I think I can say this because I'm a programmer, so I think I'm allowed to say it, but I feel like we're surrounded by some of the top pixel artists in the industry, so it's kind of normal for us to go that route, because I feel like we have some pretty talented pixel artists on our team. So it's just a combination of what we're good at and also what we grew up with. And but we also play like PlayerUnknown and Monster Hunter and all those games. But when it comes to making games, we're really passionate about 2D games.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you that both Cyrix and I grew up with the same types of love for that style of game. I mean, NES, SNES, Genesis, the whole suite of, old consoles, 8-bit, 16-bit, it really kind of burns into your mind. And so we love that too. Not to say we don't love some of the newer stuff, because we're massive fans of what is happening lately with the Switch and other platforms as well. But it definitely shows in the work that we see from Tribute as well.
Whenever we go to like PAX or any convention, we often get people that stop by and say, I totally see that Mega Man influence, or I totally see that enemy seems like it's coming from, I don't know, Contra or some other old school game. And oftentimes they're totally right. Like we often play like all these old school games and kind of try to, I don't know, take that essence, or like what makes them really shine, and just put them in our game, I guess.
So I'm going to skip past Mercenary Kings for now. We'll definitely be coming back to Mercenary Kings, but Can you tell us a little bit about Curses and Chaos?
The funny story about Curses and Chaos is it was actually the second title that we started working on. While we were finishing up with Wizorb, I was alone working on ports, and my two other colleagues, they were kind of, they didn't know what to do really. So they started toying around with some ideas for another game. And that's kind of when we started working on, where the idea for Curse and Chaos came out. So it was supposed to be a super, super tiny game. And eventually we decided to just put it on the side and gamble the whole company on Mercenary Kings, which we can talk about later. But after Mercenary Kings, we felt the need to go back on Curse and Chaos and finish that game. So it was kind of like a weird production cycle where we just put the game aside for a bit and then went back on it. And when we went back on it, like we had all these new ideas, and the game kind of blew up, and we added, initially it didn't have any boss fights. It was just like waves of enemies. So we added boss fights, and then we added multiplayer online, and what else did we add? We added so much stuff. I don't remember everything, but it was really a weird project where we just kept adding and adding and adding. And it was probably our scariest project, as to like we didn't really know when to say like this is done.
How did you know that it was done then in that scenario?
We kind of decided it was done when we felt like the ideas that we were adding didn't really fit into the simplistic nature of Curse and Chaos. So like just pixel art kind of has that simplistic feel to it, even though it's super tight and really nice. It like there's just some mechanics that wouldn't fit in a game that looks that simplistic. So that's when we decided like, okay, I think we can't really cram in more stuff. It'll just be like way too complex, and it just won't cater to the people that actually want that type of game.
Sure. So before we move on to the other couple of games we want to talk about, I want to stop and discuss music and sound. The right music and sound can really make a game stick with you. And as fans of retro games, what's your favorite retro track?
I mean, the go-to for everybody is the pause music for Battletoads. We know that.
Yeah, that was pretty great. I think I'm going to be pretty boring on that one, but I think I'm going to say the Mario 1 tracks. Like, they're so iconic. You can actually see every single level in your head just by listening to the music. And that to me is crazy when music actually makes you relive some moments. Like just when you go through that first like inside the first pipe and you're in that underground level, like that music is, to me, is just so iconic. It just clicks. But yeah, I'm also a huge fan of Castlevania tracks. Like they've always really nailed their music.
Which one of the early Castlevania games is your favorite?
Oh God, that's a tricky question.
You say Castlevania, and Soul's going to have to ask more questions about it. So.
You know it. I'm a big Castlevania fan, especially the early games.
I think I'm going to disappoint you, but I actually really got into Castlevania on the DS, but I went back on the earlier stuff afterwards. But
we can talk about things like if you want to get into Symphony of the Night, or all of those. The whole Game Boy Advance and DS era had some fantastic 2D. So Aria of Sorrow.
Yeah, they're all amazing. I spent way too much time grinding for all of those souls, and and it was insane.
So we know that although you're not necessarily the composer, there's just a lot of great music that comes through in the tribute games, and we get to hear some of that in a game like Mercenary Kings, which we've sort of glazed over a little bit here. So let's talk about Mercenary Kings. That game has some, at least to us, some very obvious inspiration from the Metal Slug series. Can we assume that the folks on your team are big fans of Metal Slug?
I really hate that reference.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I love it because we're huge fans of Metal Slug. Like we won't lie. But like the challenge with Mercenary Kings is people kind of assume, since it's a military team, people assume it's Metal Slug since the sprites are kind of chunky and they have somewhat the same scale and everything. But when we set out to work on Mercenary Kings, our initial goal was actually, we're huge fans of Monster Hunter. So we were playing Monster Hunter on, I think it was the Wii back then. And it was the PSP actually. So we were playing Monster Hunter on PSP, and we thought, what would Monster Hunter look like in 2D? And that's when we started designing Mercenary Kings and figuring out what we could do, with that type of game.
So I'm not gonna let Cyrix ask his questions yet, though, because I'm stuck on this idea that you guys kind of have a funny feeling about the inspiration, the visual inspiration, triggering that Metal Slug feel. Is that? Being big fans of that, is it just that you don't want people to instantly kind of think immediately, oh, well, this is just a clone? So,
the challenge with being compared with Metal Slug is somewhat of run and gun, like a really truly classic run and gun type of game,
like a Contra.
where you run from left to right, and then you reach the end of a level, and then move on to the next mission, and so on. But Mercenary Kings is more of an exploration type of game where you loot materials and then you craft new gun parts, and the end of the mission, or the mission objective, is somewhere in this huge map. So you have to kind of go all over the place and try to find your mission objective. So when people go in thinking it's Metal Slug, they automatically run to the right, and they just plow through enemies and die right away. But Mercenary Kings is a bit more tactical, where you have to be a bit slower when attacking enemies, and planning your attacks is not just running and gunning. So that's been our challenge with the game. Is people come in, they play maybe half an hour, and they expected Metal Slug, but then they're disappointed. But if they play an hour or two, then it starts to click, and it's this is amazing. You gather materials, and then you can pimp out your gun. You could add a toilet bowl barrel to your gun, or build a trombone shotgun and stuff like that. So you can do some really crazy contraptions with your gun. Each gun is split up in 5 parts, and you can mix and match them together. So the possibilities are endless. And also the boss fights are pretty impressive. yeah, we have these super huge bosses in the game. So it's kind of, I love being compared to Metal Slug because that's an amazing game, but I feel like if you go in thinking it's Metal Slug, you're going to be kind of sad because it's not as fast paced as Metal Slug, and it's not the type of game that you can kind of like put your brain to off and just plow through enemies. So yeah, that's my thought on Metal Slug.
Well, I think people are going to love this information because the crowd that we're generally talking to that are listening here, for the most part, are a bit Switch centric. And so some of this to a lot of people is going to be new. And so they're going to get a chance to listen to this before they're going to get their copy from Limited Run. And so I think they're really going to enjoy hearing that. And they're going to give it that extra time to be able to invest and understand what that difference is between something like Metal Slug and what this is with Mercenary Kings. So we're really happy that you've been able to expand upon that a bit for us.
Yeah, and the game really caters well to Switch because it's like the game is pretty huge and it's really fun to just go on short bursts of like just do a quick mission here and there. It's also 4-player co-op online, offline, split screen, and local online. So like the Switch is perfect for it with the Joy-Cons and everything. It's a really good fit.
Okay. Yeah. No, I completely understand I think it's not that you mind being compared to, Metal Slug. It's that the comparison's really unfair because they're not the same kind of game.
Well, I'm just saying that like I want people to have a better understanding as to what to expect. Like, yeah, we're like, other than aesthetics, like I think we're totally different games.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Josh from Limited Run was the same way when he talked about his game Saturday Morning RPG. He doesn't like that people refer to it as the Ready Player One of video games because it's it's not a fair comparison to him. So but I can totally get that. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's really a challenge. Like I think everyone's, how do I say this? Like everyone kind of goes in looking at a trailer and then they make up their mind as to what that game is, and the obvious thing is to just compare it to some other game. So I totally get where people are coming from when they compare it to another game. Like it's the best way to communicate with someone else as to what a game is to say it's some of this and some of that. Like people will totally get it really quickly. So it's understandable that people would make that comparison.
Just recently, Mercenary Kings got a bit of a makeover with the release of Mercenary Kings Reloaded Edition. So what made you go back to the title to do this update? We
decided to do a Reloaded Edition mostly because we were really burnt out after Mercenary Kings, and we really worked super hard on it, and we needed to move on to something else. But we took so many notes as to like where were the pain points. We noticed that people died at like these spots and some things that just didn't make the cut back then. For example, like having 4 characters. And yeah, we had a bit of time on our hands to do an update. So we decided now that we're ready to go back on Mercenary Kings and like we've made our peace with the launch, like that's behind us. Yeah, we just decided like let's just do a big update and try to generate buzz around like our Switch, Xbox One, and Vita releases. So yeah, we put the whole team back on Mercenary Kings, and we just made a plan of like these mission objectives were boring, let's try to revamp them, or like this level was pretty hard, so let's try to improve it, and let's add 2 new characters. So just a bunch of quality of life improvements and actual like goodies for the players. So yeah, that was kind of like our thought, like let's finally go back on that game and improve the features that people were complaining about.
for your most recent completely new property is Flint Hook, and the hook shot makes for a really cool movement through the game. And I'm going to draw another comparison here, but it kind of reminds me of Bionic Commando. And was that part of the inspiration for the game or the character, or was this just something that you guys designed and it just so happened to coincide that way?
Yeah, I think Bionic Commando is a good reference. Initially, one thing that's kind of interesting, like we wanted to try to improve the vertical aspect of side scrollers. So initially, when we were working on Mercenary Kings, our first levels, like one of our first level was a big tower-like building, and it was so frustrating when you got to the top and you fell down and you had to like jump back onto all those platforms and make your way up. So eventually we redesigned Mercenary Kings with those with that in mind. So we removed most of the vertical aspect of Mercenary Kings and decided to go with layers. So you can change streets by going into doors and stuff like that, or into alleyways. So when we tackled Flint Hook, we thought, like, how could we have fixed that? Like, how could we improve vertical movement? So initially we started working on the hook shot, and we tried a bunch of games like Bionic Commando and even like Spider-Man, and we tried to understand what made those games cool and how could we improve on that formula. We just prototyped the hook shot for a while, and initially the hook shot was actually your weapon at the same time, so you could attack other enemies with your hook shot, or it would grapple you towards an enemy, and then you would have like a short range melee attack, something like that. So that's kind of like the story behind the hook shot of Flint Hook. It was more of how can we solve vertical movement and make it not painful when you fall down.
With both Flint Hook and Mercenary Kings Reloaded Edition, you've moved on to a brand new platform in the Nintendo Switch. So in the past, developers have commented on some of the difficulties with developing for Nintendo platforms. And obviously, you have experience doing Game Boy Advance titles and stuff. So how did that go for Tribute this time around, working with Nintendo to develop for the Switch?
The Switch was a really easy platform to work with. I actually kind of miss the Game Boy Advance days. Like, it was always fun because you had these limitations really early on, so you had to be creative about how to make your features work inside those limits. But yeah, with the Switch, we didn't really encounter that many issues. It was surprisingly fun to develop for.
I think that's a really neat idea, though, that the developers are kind of seeing the Switch as something that is a much easier platform. I know, having just some industry folks that I've talked to that worked on platforms like the Wii and Wii U and even the GameCube, that they've run into very just strange things. Some of that comes from, what those platforms are. Some of it came from dealing with Nintendo, because Nintendo can be unique, I'll say. So it almost makes me gleeful, happy that the Switch is looked at so profoundly improved, not just from the fan standpoint, but also from the developer standpoint, because it tells us that developers will probably want to bring more of their games to that platform. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. And I did work on one GameCube title, and I can say the Switch is much more easy to like work with. Like, I think we kind of saw it already. There's so many games coming out on Switch, and I think the fact that the tools are so easy to work with, it kind of shows already.
Yeah. So just last month, we had a chance to speak with both Josh and Doug from Limited Run, and it has to be a great feeling to see your releases on the cartridges now. And can you tell us a little bit about how the deal with Limited Run to bring Mercenary Kings and Flint Hook to the physical media on the Switch came about, how that happened?
Yeah, that was... honestly, I love Limited Run. They've been amazing to us. when we started Tribute, I kind of figured we're never going to release physical copies of our games. That's just not doable at the size that our company is going to be at. So eventually Sony put us in contact with Limited Run. And I think we had a meeting at E3 a while back, and they just, they were big fans of our games. So it was a super easy sell. They just offered us to release Mercenary Kings and Curses and Chaos, which was a no-brainer to us. Like we never thought we would do any physical copies of our games. So with the Switch, I was pretty excited because they offered to even do like a collector's edition that bundles both Mercenary Kings and Flint Hook. And just package a bunch of stuff with it, with the steel case and all that stuff. So they're amazing. I feel like they're doing God's work.
that double cart steel case is impressive.
Yeah, I didn't even know they did that. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Now, games like Flint Hook and Mercenary Kings, you sort of said they visually feel like games that are right at home on the Switch. Are there any features of the Switch that you especially enjoy the idea of working with? Something like HD rumble or motion controls?
I think what we were mostly excited for was all the combination of controllers that you could, like all the ways you can play with your Switch, whether it's handheld mode or with the Joy-Cons attached to that. I don't know what the name of the device is, but that thing that comes bundled, or with the Pro Controller, and then also being able to play multiplayer online and locally. And then we even played with Mercenary Kings. There's a mode where we call it face-to-face, where you kind of put it in tate mode, I think it's called, where you and a friend can sit across from one another, and then we split the screen like on a different angle. Like one person has his screen on his side, and then the person that's across from you has his screen facing him. So yeah, we played around with those features and tried to see how we can be creative with it. So that's where I think the Switch shines, is there's just so many possibilities with the controllers and the online multiplayer stuff.
Okay, so some of us are hopeful that Tribute has plans to do remasters or re-releases of the other titles like Ninja Senki and Absorbs and Curses and Chaos on the Switch. Have you guys given any thought to that, or are you just looking to the future?
Right now, I think I'm gonna. That's a tough question. I think right now we're focusing on our next title. We've been working so much on ports and everything, and we kind of have so many ideas that we've been pushing back. So right now we're really focusing on what's next. But I wouldn't say we're against it. I know I keep getting like people asking me for Wizorb and Curses and Chaos on Switch, and I totally agree that it would really work well. Especially Curses and Chaos with the dual Joy-Cons, that would be amazing. It would be such a blast.
I think we agree. So when you're looking beyond these current releases and you're thinking about what you guys are going to work on in the future, can you give the listeners any hint of where you're headed next, even if it's maybe a vague hint?
We're working on something new. So we never did any sequels, and we're not going to start with the next project. And the only hint I could say is look at our history and try to guess or try to see what you would really, really love to see us tackle, basically. I think, people are going to be pretty pleased with where we're headed with our next title.
I can tell you that after I have done so much research and looked through your catalog and how much I see that you've done, my own personal thing, and unfortunately this is kind of jumping on the bandwagon of what's been happening lately, because there's 2 other titles that are coming out, actually 3 now, 3 other titles from other studios, other publishers, all together just completely different, that makes me want to go down this road. personally, I would love to see all of your star characters in a fighting game. I think it would be so cool.
Or a Mario Kart clone or something.
That would be awesome too. Yeah.
Some of those clones are better than Mario Kart sometimes. Like Sonic Racing Transform was a phenomenal little knockoff.
That's true.
Hey, and Hello Kitty Racers is coming, or Hello Kitty Cruisers is coming to the
Okay, you
to
can't
the Switch.
talk. You're done talking. You're done.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Like we have so many characters, it's insane. It's people think we're crazy that we're not doing sequels after sequels. Like we just have way too many characters that we want to develop and put forward. So yeah, I think we have the roster for a good Super Smash Brothers or something like that.
Yeah, I'd love to see it eventually. I mean, one of the best things about a studio of your size is you get a chance to tackle the most interesting, what people feel is like passionate to them.
And in the meantime, you can always throw an Easter egg or two into, throwbacks to old games and new games, like little Easter eggs if you wanted to.
Yeah, and we do it quite often. Like Caesar in Mercenary Kings it's somewhat of a reference to Flint Hook. So yeah, the radio operator and how like Caesar comes to help the Mercenary Kings is like it's coming from Flint Hook's universe or something like that. We're kind of trying to cross-reference our games as often as we can.
The final question we have here, and I tend to write like one silly question to ask when we do these interviews. Like Soul wrote it last time when we were speaking limited run, but my question is, I want to know your thoughts on this. The Virtual Boy, was it the most ambitious endeavor ever that fell short of being understood as the greatest game console handheld ever, or is it the most misunderstood juggernaut of the gaming industry? That's what I want to know.
I mean, I think the answer is pretty clear here. Like, would we have the Oculus if we didn't have the Virtual Boy?
See, he and we understand this, Soul. He and I get this.
But that's only so we have this kind of ongoing battle because I have a love-hate relationship with the Virtual Boy. I had one. I have visual proof that I had one.
I still have one. I still have mine.
That's just it. I didn't want my eyes to continue to bleed.
Did you buy it when it was full priced or when?
Oh God,
when it got discounted at KB Toys or something?
Yeah, I picked mine up. I think for $30 at a Target when it was when they were getting rid of them.
You have to feel sorry for the people that paid full price.
Yeah, well, I bought the original Sega CD, and I barely have any games for it. Like it didn't last long enough, I feel. So I think we all have these I don't know, speed bumps, or like we all make mistakes, I guess.
Hey, the Sega CD had Shining Force CD on it.
It also had Sewer Shark, but the Virtual Boy was not a mistake. It was not a mistake I made.
You're right, though. The Oculus, like that, totally had the precursor of the Oculus, and back then, Nintendo's already said this before, the only reason it was all red was it was way too expensive to produce the other LED colors.
That's interesting. I never knew that.
So I want to thank you, JF, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, developing and making these things that we're going to just really enjoy when Limited Run gets these things to us, these cartridges, because we're huge fans. We love the work that you've done, and we can't wait to play them. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back at some point in the future after you've come out with maybe one or two more games.
Yeah, for sure.
The Circle of Life. Virtual Console is dead. Long live Virtual Console. The Inner Sphere has gone into full-blown torch and pitchfork mode as Nintendo has announced that the Switch will not receive the beloved Virtual Console. Per Nintendo, and I quote, "There are currently no plans to bring classic games together under the Virtual Console banner as has been done on other Nintendo systems." End quote. Now that's not to say that the dream is dead. In true Nintendo fashion, they've recently released details about their upcoming online service. As a part of that announcement, there will be NES games available to play with their online service. They plan on starting with 20 NES games with, quote, more added regularly. As of now, Nintendo has announced soccer, tennis, balloon fight, Ice Climber, Donkey Kong, Mario Bros, Dr. Mario, Super Mario 3, and The Legend of Zelda. The real kicker here, however, is that not only will you be able to play these games while subscribed, online play will be added to every classic game. So imagine picking up the controller with a friend who is hundreds of miles away and kicking up a 2-player game of Dr. Mario. In addition to the classic games, the online service will feature the obvious and currently free online play for newer games such as Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the upcoming Mario Tennis Aces. I know you're going to be using that, and more. To get the most out of your experience with these games, unfortunately, and I think I can say that this with confidence that the sentiment is rather widely shared, you'll need the Switch Online app for your phone. This next thing is the number one feature requested for the Switch. Nintendo is finally implementing cloud saves. But here's the rub on that. There's not really any other platform that requires you to pay for backing up your saves to the cloud. Nintendo has a special relationship with how they handle their online offerings, and as much as I can be on board with them, they really can shoot themselves in the foot at times. All of this, though, is packaged in what I'd say is reasonable pricing. So hear me out here. $3.99 a month, $7.99 for 3 months, or $19.99 a year for the individual plans. But in yet another strange twist of fate, Nintendo is also offering what they're calling the family membership plan for up to 8 total members at $34.99 a year. So if you and your 7 friends get together on that family plan, and by the way, you have to have friends.
Oh, you're my friend.
I know, but that's just the 2 of us.
It's still cheaper if we split it 2 ways.
That's true. If you and 7 friends get together on that family plan, that's a mere $4.38 per person for the year. But even if you just paid for the full $19.99 a year, I see that as a good enough price, minus the fact that the cloud save should probably just be free for everyone regardless.
I feel like they're doing that on purpose. I feel like the cloud saves are the draw to get people to pay the $19.99. I don't know if what they're offering otherwise is necessarily enough pull. They know that some people are going to pay the $20 so that they can play online with friends for some games. And some people are interested in their new version of the not really a virtual console service. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't be interested in this service at all because they're going to play solo games and story-driven games that don't require 2 players. So why spend the money? I'll tell you why you spend the money. You spend the money so that you have cloud saves. So this is their way of drawing in that crowd that otherwise might not be interested. And $20 a year is a lot cheaper than the other services out there on other consoles.
Very much. And I think that's part of why I can sort of forgive them on this. I'm not necessarily in it for much of the online play. Some of it, sure. I'm not really a Splatoon player, but I know that that is a massively popular game, and you're going to need to pay if you're going to play that game. Because let's face it, although they're adding this single player content to that game, the real draw is the multiplayer. I'm
also going to be interested in how they're going to add multiplayer to the classic games they're releasing. And I can see Dr. Mario being 2 players, and you can have, one person on one side of the, the world and one person on the other side of the world playing a 2-player game of Dr. Mario. But there's some games they have listed that I don't know how they would add multiplayer to it. And even if they do add multiplayer, are they considering stuff like leaderboards multiplayer? Because there's a lot of games out there that tout multiplayer, but all it is really leaderboards, like Gear Club Unlimited. It's a pretty solid game, but their multiplayer is literally leaderboards. So it's kind of missing that. The problem behind that, of course, was that it started out as a mobile game and it's been transitioned over to Switch. So I kind of give them a pass on that. But games like Dr. Mario, like if they're doing leaderboards for Dr. Mario, which I don't know how they would, but this is Nintendo, they could possibly be doing that. It kind of takes away from the idea of it being true multiplayer.
Well, Dr. Mario has a 2-player mode where you can play versus the other person. And I think tennis, balloon fight, ice climber, obviously Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 3 all have more than one player, not at the same time on all of those games, but you can play 2 players. I'm curious how they plan on introducing, if at all, The Legend of Zelda. I don't know what you would do for multiplayer there.
I don't know how multiplayer on Mario 3 would even really work, because you don't play at the same time, so it's like a trade-off. So games like Dr. Mario and the original Mario Brothers, I completely get that. Tennises and golf and all the other stuff that, you know, that could be added or will be included. I can understand those. But when you have stuff like Super Mario Brothers 3, you're basically going to join a multiplayer game and then sit in a lobby until the person playing Mario or Luigi, depending on who you're playing,
we had to do.
Dies.
That's how we played as kids.
But the difference is you're sitting next to each other. Like you can wander off and go get something to eat, and they can yell for you from the other room. When you're playing online, assuming that you're using the app, I guess you might have your phone on you, but I don't know anybody who's actually using the app. Right now, when I play multiplayer games on Switch, I'm on Discord.
Yeah, and I think that that's what we're likely to see for the near future, at least for our community. And I highly recommend doing it that way, simply because we can open up an easy lobby on Discord with many people in it all at once. Some are who are participating, some who are not, and just hanging out. So,
and I know Discord has reached out to Nintendo about helping them design a voice feature. And they just came out with their collaboration with Microsoft to bring it to the Xbox, or bring a sort of tie-in to the Xbox. Now, when people start up a game in Xbox, it actually shows them as in-game in their Discord.
I don't think we're going to see Nintendo partnering with them.
No, this is something I feel like Nintendo likes to keep in-house, and so I don't see that happening, but just to say, you know, they have options, and there are companies that want to work with them, and Discord right now is hot, and they just celebrated their 3-year anniversary. Like they're going places. They're going up, up, up.
Speaking of hot, continuing my segue theme, I wanted to take a look forward at E3. So E3 is coming up quickly, and before you know it, it will be the middle of June. Everyone is salivating at the chance to see what's in store for the Switch. Nintendo's press conference is set for noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on the 12th. And of course, there will be plenty of Nintendo Treehouse to appease everyone before and after. If I were a betting man, and I am, I would bet that we'll likely see more of the already announced Yoshi, Metroid Prime, Captain Toad, and Octopath Traveler. We're also likely to get our first real look at Super Smash Bros. For the Switch, which I'm sure will be on everybody's mind. But outside of those titles, there's a lot of room for surprises from the big end. What do you think we might get that people are not expecting?
Well, based on a lot of the rumors and the rumor mill and the supposed leaks and everything, there are several games that people are kind of like hinting at. We just recently had a leak where it was talking about how a company was working on like a Star Fox port, and how a company may be trying to work on an F-Zero, which is, you know, that's got a lot of people going crazy for the idea. There's been people who've been screaming for F-Zero ever since the last F-Zero, which I believe is the GameCube.
That sounds right.
So having F-Zero on the Switch on the go would be phenomenal. I'm also thinking that we might see some more about the Sonic racing game that we got teased. I don't think it's Sonic R. I think it's going to be Sonic Racing. And of course, the tease kind of leads you to believe that because there's so much space after the red R they show. So it makes you think it's going to be a racing game as opposed to Sonic R. So I'm hoping that they do something with that.
So I think from my perspective, as far as the Switch is concerned, I'd love to see a few different games. It'd be great to get a look at Bayonetta 3. The first two are obvious hits, and continuing that series with the third coming soon just sort of makes sense to me that maybe it's far long enough that we can get some gameplay footage out of it. I'd also just really like to see Borderlands 3 in general. I'd love to see 1 and 2 come over to the Switch. I don't know if we'll get any of that, but I do think that there's a possibility. I also think that the first two are old enough that the Switch could easily handle them graphically, and I'd love to have them on the platform. Maybe that's a bit of a reach, definitely. But yeah.
No, I feel like Borderlands 1 and 2 would work really well on the Switch. I was thinking about this today, actually, driving home from work. I was thinking about Borderlands 3 and whether or not I would want it to come to Switch immediately. Because Borderlands has a habit of coming out, releasing a metric ton of DLC, and all of it's good. There's only been like 1 or 2 that have been kind of missed with me. Moxie's Underdome Riot, that kind of thing. But they release a ton of DLC, and then they release the Game of the Year edition.
With everything on it, right.
With everything on it, exactly. So that concerns me for 2 reasons. One, it would mean that in order to be a full collector, you would probably have to buy the game twice, which isn't the biggest deal because I like to support Gearbox and 2K when it comes to Borderlands because Borderlands is awesome. But also, we are seeing a trend on Switch where we'll get part of a game and then download the rest of it. So if I'm buying a Game of the Year edition of Borderlands, I want it on the cart. I don't want the main game on the cart and then a code for all the DLC. I may as well just have bought the main game to begin with and paid for the DLC after the fact. Yeah, it's a little bit cheaper. It's a little bit cheaper to do it in a Game of the Year edition, but it detracts from the idea of what a Game of the Year edition is. The draw to a Game of the Year edition was that you had it on the disc. And in this case, if it's not all on the cart, then it's going to be basically the same cart, just with an additional code. You're paying for an additional code.
Yeah. Another title I would love to see, Red Dead Redemption 2. I'd love to see that come to the Switch. Rockstar gave us L.A. Noire, so why not bring the cowboy over?
The whole John Marsden story from Red Dead Redemption 1, it was amazing. I loved it. I would love to see RDR1 come to the Switch, just beforehand, because they just like revamp it and make it backwards compatible with like the Xbox One and stuff. So I feel like, it would do really well to give Switch players a little taste of what we can expect from, just more Rockstar in general. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be clamoring over GTA 5 maybe coming to the Switch. That might be something that gets announced at E3. I would rather see RDR1 come. It's an older game, but it's so fun. I don't even have to have, if you want to save space, you can take out the multiplayer. That's fine. I don't have to have all the DLC, though that would be an extra bonus, and considering how old the game is, it would just make sense to include it. But give me RDR1 and you will have me hooked and waiting for RDR2.
Yeah, I'd love to see both of those come over to the platform. I would guess that if there's one title that's gotten the most controversy over whether it's coming, whether it's not, is this a real title? There's been a lot of rumor around Pokemon, and I'm not a Pokemon fan. I respect what Pokemon is. I don't necessarily know whether that's going to hit the platform with what they consider a mainline Pokemon game this year or not. That there's chatter in the Discord back and forth. In fact, even today, the day that we're recording this segment, there's been plenty of back and forth about that particular topic.
I feel like we'll get some more information about Pokemon. I don't necessarily think it's going to be announced a release date, or at least not this year. But I would like some more information on Pokemon. I am a Pokemon fan. The Pokken tournament was kind of a letdown, but that's not a fair comparison comparing Pokken to the actual Pokemon core series. I'm interested to see how they're going to handle Pokemon on the Switch, because they're not really giving us anything to go by other than, hey, it's coming. And we don't really know why they even announced it and then gave us nothing. So there's been some speculation that they were kind of reeling from other leaks and stuff that were coming out. So in order to like plug some holes, they just like, hey, by the way, we're making a Pokemon for Switch, because it was last E3 that they announced Pokemon for Switch, wasn't it?
I think so. It's been a bit. And really at that point, I think all they did was say, yeah, we're working on something. And they didn't really give any detail. I don't necessarily know what to expect. Nintendo doesn't necessarily have a habit of announcing mainline Pokemon games at E3, but, you know, Nintendo doesn't have a habit of a lot of things that they do. So they could surprise us.
So yeah, now I'm on board with all of that. The only thing that I kind of want to see at E3 might be maybe some filler stuff, some stuff like, you know, these games are already out on Switch. By the way, we're going to do physical releases for them. Kind of like how they did with Sonic Mania, how that was just kind of like, oh, we're going to be bringing this to a physical release now. And I say this mainly because I'm staring at companies like Frozen Byte, and I'm staring at companies like Red Barrels, and I'm just like, why don't I have a physical copy of Nine Parchments? Why don't I have a physical copy of Outlast 1 and 2? I want to see filler like that. That's the filler I want to see at E3, is you love these games digitally, and now we're going to be bringing, you know, special edition or just physical in general. Like I want to see a couple things like that get announced, just to kind of curve in and out of the rest of the E3 stuff.
I think we're going to see some of that type of thing. And I'm going to be looking forward to playing a lot of the stuff that's going to come out of E3. E3 is always exciting, and I'm definitely looking forward to the news. And I think we're probably going to do some more special coverage about E3 as it happens. So look out for that. Speaking of playing games, you know, right at the beginning of May, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, one of the better games from the Wii U, made its way over to the Switch. And I started playing it. You know, as a platformer, it's really solid, I'd say. Of course, aside from the slightly improved graphics, which were already beautiful on the Wii U, the biggest change to the game is the addition of Funky Mode. Now, some people, including myself, would rank Funky Mode as a bit of an easy mode for the game, but I'm going to tell you right now, it makes the game extremely enjoyable. Funky Mode gives you a full 5 hearts right off the bat. Funky Kong can double jump, and by holding the jump button, he'll float back down to the ground slowly. Now, what you don't get at that point is a partner. When you play Funky Kong, those barrels you pick up, you don't get anybody else. You don't get Dixie. You don't get Diddy. None of that. So you're playing Funky Mode the whole way through. All in all, I'd say that the game is worth picking up, even if you played it previously. Of course, having it on the go is great, and aside from the already mentioned graphics, the music from composer David Wise keeps you grooving throughout the game. The only thing I can say that I didn't enjoy was the price point. However, I have come to accept the fact that we have a Switch tax. As much as I enjoy the addition of Funky Mode, I just can't see how its addition can justify the $60 price point.
To me, that was a $40 game.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's too much more to say about this game, considering it already has a great pedigree. But what I really want to hear is what you've been playing this month.
Okay, so when we started out the show notes for this one, my plan and intention was to play Shantae all the way through, which, as of this recording, I have 100% of the main story of Shantae. But I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to our listeners if I didn't discuss another game that I beat, which is Galgun 2. So I don't want to say bit the bullet. I kind of swallowed my pride and decided that I was going to play Galgun just to see what the fuss was about. And yes, there is a ton of fan service. The game itself is very solid. The premise behind it is that you are basically chosen by this angel agency to assist an angel in corralling a demon infestation. So all these girls at the school have demons that are kind of taking over the school. And not all girls are affected by them, but what happens is, in order to see them, you have to wear a pheromone visor, and that attracts the demons, but it also attracts human girls. So you're being bombarded by these girls, and the only way to stop them is to use your demon buster gun to basically shoot them with ecstasy.
I just have to interrupt you to say that this plot is like tissue paper thin.
Yes. Okay. So I'll get to that. So you're that's how you stop the normal girls and the demons. You knock them off the girls, and then you suck them into the demon buster, or you can shoot them outright if you want to. There's some hidden stuff, some special demons. There's a few boss battles that are actually kind of neat. The way they play out. There are mechanics that you have to follow when you're doing that. It's basically an on-rail shooter, because once you finish one area, you shoot your outline and that you travel to the next area. So the movement is very minimal. You can duck up and down, you can look left and right, and you can also lean left and right, but you can't walk anywhere during the actual game. So your basic movement is going to be shooting where you're going. So that is how that plays out. Now, the story itself is actually, you said it's paper thin, but once you get into more of the detail, there is like love interest. There is kind of an endearing story, and I don't want to ruin it. For the people who've actually played the game, I will tell you that I got the Chiru A ending, if that'll make sense to the people who've played through it. And I enjoyed it. I liked the story arc. I liked the way it went. But there's multiple endings to the game, and you don't even have to play the entirety of the game to unlock an ending. I had 12 days left, and I unlocked this ending, and it gave me the option of skipping to the final day. So it has that going for it also. So it has some replay value. It has kind of an endearing, almost visual novel kind of story to it. Love interests and stuff like that. But if you get past the fan service, and I've said this before about games like Knights of Azure, if you get past the fan service, the game is fun. Very fun for what it is. I don't recommend playing it in a public place without headphones. I don't recommend playing it in front of loved ones or children. I do not recommend buying the DLC, which is literally just alternate costumes for the girls who are going to run up to you, including one that's nothing but bubbles from a bubble bath. So they know who their target audience is, and they're driving it home. And I'm afraid that's going to turn a lot of people who otherwise would enjoy the game away, just because of how taboo or passé, risque the game is. And it is all those things, but it was very fun. I enjoyed it. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I thought it was really fun. I may play through it again eventually one day. I've got a huge backlog to go through. It's not a game I'm going to recommend to everybody like I do games like Axiom Verge or even Knights of Azure 2, but it is a fun game. Just go in knowing what you're getting yourself into and kind of sit back and enjoy a story unfolding that you didn't think was going to happen.
So speaking of fan service, one of our fans sent us a question. On the Discord from Bellydrum, what genre/style of game do you feel like the Switch has been lacking? What potential Switch ports could help fix that issue?
Fighters. No, I'm serious, because all we have currently is we have the Neo Geo stuff that you can get off of the eShop, and stuff like the Street Fighter. Right now, we just have the Street Fighter 2 competitor stuff, a competition edition or whatever. But we have Street Fighter, the Ultimate Street Fighter collection coming out for the anniversary. And those are great. Those are solid fighters. They're nothing really new. We have BlazBlue coming out, which is going to correct this. We have, I think, Guilty Gear maybe in the works kind of thing. Blade Strangers is where I was getting to. So Blade Strangers is what I'm super looking forward to. Game from Nicholas. It has characters from the other games they've released, like Isaac and stuff like that. And it even has a a character from a game they didn't release, which is the Gunvolt Striker, which is kind of neat, or Striker Gunvolt. But as far as ports go, I want to know why we haven't seen DB Fighter Z, and I would absolutely love Skullgirls. I think Skullgirls would be really good. We have a couple games that have been teased back and forth, like some retro style fighters that have kind of gone dark, and we don't know if we'll ever see them. We got Blaze Rangers coming out, like we said, BlazBlue, and which I may have said BlazBlue earlier. I'm sorry, and maybe a Guilty Gear I think has been announced, but I feel like we're kind of lacking in fighters. Like, we have some good epic RPGs, we have some amazing platformers. Puzzle games, music games, they're all coming out. Adora Bears would get very angry if I didn't mention that we could probably also use visual novels, but we even have a few of those coming potentially. So I'm going to stick by what I said and say that although we have some, I don't think we've hit the nail on the head when it comes to fighters yet.
I'm just going to say, I heart Solange. That's all I'm going to say. I cannot wait to play that game. And I also really want Code of Princess, because I want to see what that looks like on the Switch. But, so I think we've actually seen a really good mix of genres on the Switch overall. It's not as perfectly balanced as Thanos would like, but it's not bad. I suppose that if I had to choose, I might look at how we don't really have a few certain types of sports games, such as hockey or football. I'm not a huge sports game person, but if it's really good, I'll certainly put some time in. I thought that RBI 17 wasn't terrible for what it was, though 18 seems to keep receiving delays, and maybe we'll get to that later this month, next month, who knows. Unfortunately, I think that the best hockey games came in the mid-late 90s from EA. But that company is like a mere shadow of what they used to be, so that's not a real solution there. As far as football, I think Madden should and will eventually make its way to the Switch with the system's popularity. That whole franchise itself can just be a system seller, so it would be really nice to see a solid port of a new Madden to bring that crowd over to Nintendo. They haven't really been with Nintendo for a long time. So I'd really like to see them come over. And I know that some of my friends that have things like a PS4, or the Xbox, they are big Madden fans. They're big sports, fans, and they're like hoping, they're really keeping their fingers crossed that stuff makes it over to the Switch. At least one of those guys has already bought a Switch, and he's played the hell out of some games, but he's kind of holding on to that PS4 thinking, I'm only going to be able to play some of these games on that. And I hope that's not true. I hope that those companies see the light and bring that stuff back to Nintendo.
I wouldn't mind some arcade sports titles. NBA Jam, NFL Blitz. I know NFL Blitz the IP is owned kind of like, that's in limbo. It was like EA, and then it was like Midway. It's kind of like a big ball of weird, but NFL Blitz, NHL Hits, NBA Jam.
NBA Jam is my jam.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I mean, we have like NBA Playgrounds, which is...
It's not the same, though. It's not the same.
I wasn't gonna say it's an arcade sports game. I was gonna say NBA Playgrounds 2 is probably the closest thing that we have, and it's not anywhere near the mark. We need NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Because they redid the NBA Jam back in the day for like the 360, so I would like to see it done again. NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, NHL Hits. I would be down for some arcade sports games, especially if they allowed you to do online play.
Oh yeah,
that'd be
I
really
think that's
awesome.
A necessity. I think you can't do a game like that nowadays without having that online play, so that you can get real fun and competitive with your friends. I just want to say though, if they do NBA Jam or something along that line, I want a collector's edition with a Marv Albert hairpiece.
Another thing that we would be kind of neat to see. Boom shakalaka. The next thing that would be neat to see would be maybe a port of Mutant Football League. I mean,
oh yeah,
because it was just like a remake of the the old Mutant League football, and I thought it looked like it was really well done. It's on PS4, Xbox, and PC. I feel like it would fit in really well on the Switch. I think that'd be a neat one to see come through.
Or what about something like a modern version of Baseball Stars? Did you ever play that on the Neo Geo?
No.
Yeah, that was a great baseball game in the arcade and on the Neo Geo. They had two of them, Baseball Stars 1 and 2. Second one is just something I can just pop in at any time and play. I really enjoy that game. I think it's so much fun. But yeah, I think sports games are probably getting the short end of the stick. We got FIFA, which is great. It's probably the best of the sports games that are on there. NBA wasn't terrible. Then I hesitate to call WWE a sports game. It's
I was about to say
not really so much a sports game. So
no. So yeah, I can agree with that. I'm sticking by the fighters, but I wouldn't mind seeing some arcade sports games. I tell you what would be really good, especially to get kids involved with the Switch, would be bringing back the Backyard series, Backyard Baseball, Backyard Football.
Yeah, I haven't played those in years.
Yep. Yeah, there was one came out on like the 3DS, maybe just the DS. I'd have to go back and check. There is a handheld Nintendo version of Backyard Football.
Yeah, that's on like the Game Boy Advance, isn't it? I think you can go back that far. I think the last one came out on the DS. Wow,
DS or 3DS. Yeah,
yeah, they really should bring that back. I think that would be a fantastic property to revive.
Yeah, it would fit right in with the the demographic that the Switch really hits.
Agreed. Sadly, all good things must come to an end.
Be sure to stop by the Nintendo Switch Collectors Discord
and join the community on the r/NS Collectors subreddit.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube.
If you prefer SoundCloud, you can give us a follow there.
We can also be heard on Google Play, iTunes, and TuneIn.
And you can find us on Twitter at OTS Collectors. For all these links and more, visit our new website at ontheshelf.media. Until next time, I'm Sol.
And I'm Cyrix. Thank you for listening to us, and we hope to have you back for the next episode of On the Shelf.